This is the E46 M3 CSL, and in my opinion, it is the best car BMW's M division has ever created. Now, in this video, I'm going to explain to you why, and by the end of it, you will agree with me. I guarantee it. One of the key things that makes this generation of M3 so special is its fabulous S54 3.2 litre naturally aspirated straight six engine. Now in the normal M3 it produces 340 horsepower, but here in the CSL you have 360 horsepower and it produces it at 7,900 RPM. Yes, this engine likes to rev, and you do have to rev it to get the most out of it, because peak torque of 370 Newton meters doesn't come in until 4,900 RPM. As for performance, well, BMW says this car will do 0 to 60 in 4.6 seconds, but I'll find out what it does in reality when I launch it a little later on in the video. Top speed, that's limited to 155 miles an hour, unless the buyer went into a BMW dealership and produced a racing license, and then they'd de-restrict the car so it could do the full 174 miles an hour. Now BMW made some changes to this engine over the normal M3 to get that extra power out of it. So it's got revised camshafts, reprogrammed ECU, you've also got a slightly different exhaust on it, and one of the key additions, this gorgeous carbon fibre air intake system. It not only looks lovely, it makes the car emit an incredible sound as well. Let's experience this engine then. Oh my God, oh, it loves to rev and it makes an incredible noise. It's all about the induction, listen. Oh! That carbon fibre airbox. The throttle response of this engine, being naturally aspirated, is just incredible. This is, I think it's my second favourite BMW M engine. The first is the E60's V10, but then this straight six in this car with that airbox. Oh, this just doesn't get boring. Oh, it did some speed. Oh, I think I need to lie down now. Believe it or not, this old car does have a soft limiter, but it doesn't reduce your pleasure when you're revving it at a standstill, because it's more of a semi than a softy, because the limiter is at 6,000 RPM. And this is what the car sounds like when you rev it while stationary from its exhaust. The M3 CSL was only available with BMW's SMG2 automatic gearbox. It's actually a manual gearbox, but you have a robot controlling the clutch and the gear changes. So for the CSL version of the M3, they actually altered the software slightly for faster changes, and apparently it can change gears in 80 milliseconds, and you, the driver, can alter the ferocity of the changes by pressing this button here to make them more aggressive or less aggressive. Bizarrely, you can only unlock the 80 millisecond shifts if you disable the stability control. Then you get an extra setting for the gearbox speed. I won't be bothering to do that today because I don't want the stability control off on such an expensive car. And anyway, it doesn't make that much difference. A lot of people say that this SMG gearbox ruined this car. It's like, it should be a manual. And do you know what? When I drove the E60 M5, the SMG in that did ruin the experience somewhat. In this though, it seems to complement the car. It can be brutal. If I accelerate now, first, change up, you get like a jolt like that when it changes gear, which sort of does add to the experience, makes it feel really motorsporty. But if you want it smooth, all you have to do is lift off the accelerator when it's changing gear, which is like what you do in a manual. After all, this is a robotised manual. You know, if you're expecting dual clutch smoothness, you're not getting it, because there's not two clutches, there's just one. And then when you get into a rhythm with it, it's fine, it's smooth, and it adds to your involvement with the car. Now, some people have actually switched out the SMG gearbox and paid a load of money to convert their M3 CSLs to manual. That is a bad idea. I'm sure it's not going to help the values, and I don't think it's going to necessarily help the driving experience. In fact, it will remove part of what makes the M3 CSL's driving experience unique. Facts. I tell you what's also facts, there's nothing wrong with the downshift. Look, it's great. Oh yeah, off we go again. See, smooth change, fine. Another key upgrade on this car compared to the normal M3 is given away by its name, CSL, which stands for Competition Sport Lightweight. This was the first ever BMW M car to feature a carbon fibre roof. It reduced the weight by 7 kilos, which may not sound like much, but it's kilograms which are high up in the car. So having the carbon fibre roof really improves the centre of gravity. But there's loads of other weight saving measures on this car, including a lightweight boot floor. You've got lighter rear window glass, you've got an aluminium bonnet. There's various carbon fibre bits inside, such as carbon fibre door cards, carbon fibre centre tunnel, and lightweight fiberglass seats. Also, the car came as standard without any air conditioning or a stereo, though thankfully this car has had them put back in. Overall, the weight saving is 110 kilos compared to the normal M3. This thing weighs in at 1,385 kilograms, which is really impressive. Back in the day, the M3 CSL came on Michelin Cup tyres, and in all but ideal conditions, they made the car rather skittish. In fact, BMW actually warned buyers about that very fact. This particular car though is now wearing Michelin Pilot Sport 4S tyres, which are a much better tyre. As for the brakes, the normal E46 M3 had 325mm discs up front, whereas the CSL had upgraded 345mm discs, while at the back, the rear caliper had a larger diameter piston. My least favourite part of this car has to be the brakes. They're all right at first, feel fine, seem to stop the car okay, but after some spirited driving on a twisty road, you start to smell them. They give off that smell of brakes are overheating because they overheat so quickly. And if you're going to take this thing on track, you'll just rinse out the brakes in a couple of laps. They are that bad. I don't know what BMW were thinking, fitting such crap brakes to such a great car. Now, one modification that people do is fit AP racing brakes, and if I own this car, that is a mod I would definitely do. It needs upgraded brakes, really does. Anyway, let's see how they perform when you need to make an emergency stop. I'm going to brake this car from 60 miles an hour. Full emergency stop, here we go. Oh, 33 metres. That's actually pretty good. However, you wouldn't be able to do that many times before the distance starts to increase as the brakes fade. The M3 CSL was the second CSL model BMW made. The first was the famous Batmobile, which was released in 1972. Then in 2003, this came along, 3 years after the introduction of the E46 M3. As you can see from this plaque here, 422 were sold in the UK, of a total of 1,383 worldwide. The selling price of this car was £57,000, which was £17,000 more than a normal E46 M3 back in the day. And people were like, what's going on? This is just absolute madness. But those who bought them made a wise investment. A normal one of these will set you back around £70,000. A low mileage, high quality example, you're looking at well over £100,000, which is nuts. Compare that to a normal E46 M3 with decent mileage, that's about £20,000. Now, if you're thinking about buying one of these, or any used car for that matter, check out my friends at Car Vertical and use the discount code Watson10 for 10% off. With Car Vertical, you can do all the usual history checks, such as make sure the car's not been stolen, that it's not been written off, that it doesn't have outstanding finance. You can also vouch the mileage as well. But another cool feature is that sometimes you can see damage repair photos of a car you're thinking of buying. Say if it's been damaged and the repairer has actually uploaded some photos of the repair they've done. For instance, this particular car looks absolutely fine. You would never know that actually once it had been in an accident, because here are the damage photos for it before it was repaired. Now, I don't know about you, but if I knew a car looked like that, I wouldn't be thinking about buying it. Now, if you want to check out Car Vertical, I'll put a link in the description of this video and the pinned comment. Anyway, let's get on with this video. BMW did some serious chassis upgrades for the CSL version of the E46 M3. So you've got uprated dampers, uprated springs. In fact, the front springs were slightly shorter, which reduced the ride height. There's also fatter anti-roll bars, stiffer suspension bushings, and the rear suspension has aluminium links. Also, the car had increased camber on the wheels for more cornering grip, and the track is 1 centimetre wider than the standard E46 M3, though I think that's to do with the fact the wheels are fatter. The car also got a faster steering rack, 3 turns lock to lock, as opposed to the normal car's 3.2 turns lock to lock. Let's see what this M3 CSL is like to drive on a twisty road.
It just feels so right. The suspension deals with bumps and imperfections really well, yet it keeps the body completely flat through the bends. Got all those revs to play with, and accelerating out of a corner of the diff just does its job. You can feel it just putting the power down so very well. Oh my God, this is an absolute blast. It's so well balanced, it's so easy to drive quickly, and you feel so much of what is going on beneath you through these brilliant sport seats which just keep you pinned in place, and through the steering, hydraulically assisted steering. I tell you what, it's the automotive equivalent of unprotected sex, because you just feel so much. Oh gosh, you forget, you know, modern electrically powered steering systems, they seem quite good, but when you go back to something like this, you realise what you're missing. This is one of the most fun cars I've ever driven. I want one so badly. So good. It's unbelievably good.
To put the CSL's capability into context, it did 7 minutes 50 seconds round the Nürburgring, which is quicker even than a Mark A VW Golf, and that's a more modern car. It's got four-wheel drive rather than being rear-wheel drive like this. Also, the Golf's got a cleverer rear differential than this car, and it's got turbocharged torque. Now, if you're wondering why I didn't get kicked for mentioning the Nürburgring, that's because this is a Matt Watson Cars video, not a Car Wow video. And to make sure you don't miss out any videos on this channel, subscribe now and hit the bell icon to turn your notifications on. Don't worry, I'm not leaving Car Wow. The CSL has some key styling upgrades over the normal E46 M3. Here at the front, you have a carbon fibre splitter, so be careful when you're going over speed humps in town. And another difference is this hole here in the front bumper, which feeds air into that carbon fibre intake. At the side, the CSL gets 19-inch alloy wheels instead of the standard car's 18 inches. Also, the wheel arches are slightly more pronounced. There's a CSL badge here on the grille, and of course, the carbon fibre roof. Though this bit of trim seems to be coming loose on this particular car. This wasn't me, BMW press office, it wasn't me. I think your guys might need to fix that. Finally then, at the back, you've got a carbon fibre diffuser, and combined with the front splitter, the CSL has 50% more downforce than a standard E46 M3. It also has an integrated bootlit spoiler, like this ducktail effect, rather than the stuck-on one that you get on the normal car. And to top it all off, you've got your CSL badging here. On the inside, the key upgrades for the CSL include an Alcantara steering wheel. Now, some owners retrim them in leather because leather is harder wearing. Why not just retrim it in Alcantara once that gets a bit grubby or wears thin? After all, an Alcantara steering wheel automatically makes a car feel faster. The steering wheel also has this nice stitching on it here. You've got your M badge, then you've got your M dials, grey background, really clear to read. And I like the fact that as the engine's warming up, you get these lights that gradually go out. You get a feature similar to that on modern M cars. Then you've got the carbon fibre door cards, carbon fibre centre console here, and my favourite bit, these wonderful bucket seats. They are absolutely awesome. Also, you get CSL on the kick plates. Then there are two buttons of note, the sport button down there that makes the throttle response a bit more snappy, and then this button here on the steering wheel, it's the only button actually, it's nice and close to the steering wheel, that makes the stability control go into track setting so it doesn't interfere quite so much. Other than that, it's just like a normal E46 3 Series, which is pretty good quality and a nice simple driver focused design. Rear passengers get to enjoy a bit of CSL-iness as well. Look, you've got carbon fibre extending all the way back here, the grippy Alcantara on the seats as well, which is handy if the driver's getting carried away, means you didn't get flung about so much. Though if you start to feel car sick, you can actually open the rear windows, which is quite unusual on a coupe, and I love the way they open. Watch this. How cool is that? Headroom's good as well, and because the front seats are very thin, knee room's good too. What's not so good though is this. If you want to get in and out, they only move forward that much. It's quite hard to squeeze through that gap. That brings me on to something else a little bit annoying. To get into the CSL's boot, you either have to press a button in the cabin or use the key, because there is no actual manual handle release. The boot capacity though is pretty decent, 410 litres, and the opening's nice and wide. Plus, you can fold down the rear seats if you need to carry longer items. It's very practical, this car. There's absolutely no excuse not to buy one.
There's one thing that surprised me about the M3 CSL is how easy it would be to live with it as a daily driver. I thought it'd just be too much of a pain, but no, it's fine. If you're cruising 60 miles an hour, it's not too noisy, you don't get too much tyre noise, there's not much wind noise. The engine is just pulling over 2,000 RPM, it's reasonably relaxed. Also, these seats, they're comfy over longer journeys. I could daily this car. If I owned one, I wouldn't daily it though, because obviously the more miles you put on it, the more you will affect its future value. That doesn't mean I wouldn't drive it though. I don't get people who buy cars like this and they never drive them, they just use them as like an asset. You know, put your money in the stock market instead. If you're lucky enough to be able to afford a car like this, you should absolutely 100% drive it. It'll still go up in value. Actually, disclaimer, the value of your investment may go down as well as up. You can't always predict the classic car market. If you're watching this video thinking, oh, do you know what? I quite fancy myself an E46 M3 CSL or just a normal E46 M3. There are three major problems to look out for. The first is if you're looking at the SMG version and it's popping into neutral, it could be the pump for the automatic gearbox failing. That's expensive to fix. Then there's the bolts which hold on the Vanos system. Now, they can fail. They're cheap to replace, but if they do fail and you don't notice it, it can knacker the engine, which is a shame because the engine's actually really, really strong. Then there's the boot floor, which can crack, and that is actually really expensive to fix as well. So make sure you do your homework. Now, if you are thinking about buying one of these, or any used car for that matter, check out my friends at Car Vertical and use the discount code Watson10. The link is in the description or the pinned comment. Anyway, seeing as we've been talking about reliability and stuff, it's time for me now to launch the shit out of this car. Okay, let's see how quick this car is from 0 to 60 miles an hour. BMW says it will take 4.6 seconds, but what will my specialist timing gear say? Now, I'm not going to put it into launch control mode because this is BMW press office's heritage fleet vehicle. I don't want to knacker the clutch, so I'm just going to roll on. Let's do it. Oh, good pickup. Oh, decent gear change. There we go. Wow. 0 to 60, 4.86 seconds without launch control. That's really impressive. This car is quick. So then we come to the end of the video, and the question is, have I convinced you that this is the best M car BMW has ever made? Of course I have. I love this car so much actually that I really want one in my life. Unfortunately, I don't have enough spare funds to buy an original one of these. So I've got a bit of a plan. How about if I bought a normal E46 M3 and they did some mods to it to CSL it? Now, if enough of you say that's a good idea in the comments below, I'll get and build a budget M3 CSL. So make sure you subscribe to this channel so you don't miss what happens. Anyway, if you want to watch some more videos, click on the windows and click on that box there to subscribe. Thanks for watching.